Hello and welcome back to Handcast for episode 3. Those of you watching will notice that I didn't record this at the same time as the intros for the previous 2 episodes. I wanted to do something that was actually out after we released the podcast, so we could be a little bit more responsive and talk to you about how it's been going down. So it's meant a lot that you guys have been watching it. I think the first episode got over 500 views across a few different mediums, which is, really great. Means a hell of a lot that people care about our band. We've loved seeing the little bits that have meant something to you, and it's got us really excited to make more for you. Watch this space for Trial and Error, starring me, Joe Tilston, and Robin Leach. Anyway, in this episode, we get a look at 2 songs. We start off by going over Milk, and then we get into Snakes and Ladders. All sorts of things came up when we were talking about Milk, like how when Sean joined, he thought it was a pretty stupid song. I'm not entirely sure if he ever really changed that opinion. I decided to play Robin a version of Milk, which was on our previous attempt at recording, and we were both pretty surprised by what we heard on that. And there was also some discussion about what might have happened had we never re-recorded Change of Plan. Snakes and Ladders leads us off into a discussion about our education, and we go off and one about the education system and how that inspired the song. And Robin recalls asking us all to do our best Sum 41 impression in part of the song. But just before we get into it, a little bit of housekeeping. Please do the liking and the subscribing. If you feel so inclined, get down and leave us a comment because it makes such a huge difference to have that interaction. And if you feel so inclined, please share as well. But now, with the bit you've all been waiting for, let's get into it. You feeling a bit warmer there, Robin?
I was, and then I came back in here, and all of that went away.
I'm definitely not shivering in
No,
my core like I was all the way through the last recording.
I would say that we've possibly bought precious seconds.
I reckon we've got 40 minutes before the shivers kick in.
Okay.
So let's get on with it.
Okay.
So we're going to discuss Milk. Which,
By random hand?
By random hand, yeah.
Good God.
Which I remember writing that. I feel like we were writing that. It was one of the later songs of the batch before we got on to Play Some and Scum. And I think I remember writing it. We were writing it in, what was it? Was it Vision?
Yeah.
With that place in Keighley.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the basement, which we wrote a lot in there, actually, in that basement.
Did we?
Yeah, we wrote Wisest Man in there. We wrote, I'm pretty sure that's where we wrote Play Some and Scum as well. We wrote Answers upstairs. I remember. But yeah, Milk.
Yeah, this would make sense because obviously this was all before getting the room at the business centre, wasn't it?
That room. Yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to get that. Yeah.
That was after that, wasn't it? That was after the album, after Change Plan came out, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was kind of while we were running up to Inhale, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, Milk. Go on then. Tell us what it's about.
It's about how bad racism is. It's an
Yes.
anti-racist song. It's pretty on the nose, I think. It's very forthright. There's no layered poetry to it.
No.
I think the lyrics are pretty straight up. In that respect, we had an older tune. We had Where's Your Argument, and we had Simple Case of Ignorance, and I think they were in very simple veins.
Morally Blind.
Morally Blind, yeah, they were all sort of in very sort of similar veins of just very
Straight up
vocals, lyrics about that kind of thing. So that's basically what it was. It's a bit of a stupid title.
I like that.
Do you?
Yeah, because I remember you being quite pleased with it at the time.
I was pleased about a lot of things at the time. In retrospect, I probably wouldn't be as pleased of now.
But yeah, I mean, so it was racism is on our doorstep. Milk
is
on the doorstep.
That was the
Presuming you've arranged for it to be there.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're not arranging your deliveries to be there, it won't be there.
Yeah.
Does that work in the analogy? Are we sort of saying, well, if you don't book racism,
Stop it, Robin.
It won't be around.
Move on.
Okay, I'm exploring the analogy. Is what I'm doing. It's what I'm doing now. I'm exploring. If anything, I'm highlighting how bad the idea is. Is basically all I'm up to.
I quite liked it. I remember when Sean joined, he thought it was fucking stupid. And still does.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
He just thought it was a really stupid name for a song.
And he might not be wrong. Who knows? But it's there now, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's, it's not what you can do. I mean, many would argue Random Man's a stupid name for a band, but
it is.
But it's on the t-shirts now, isn't it? So
I'm going to have a quick look, because I don't think...
The band is called Random Man. I'm going to look this up.
I just was Milk on the original Change of Plan before? Yeah, it was.
Well, so we did a recording in Manchester, did we?
What?
Oh!
What the...
What on earth was that?
Yeah.
Was that the intro?
Yeah. Right. So,
wow.
Yeah, because that is not how it starts now, is
No.
it?
No, it's not. No, that's a fascinating one.
I fully was not expecting that.
No.
I haven't got the new one to listen to. The new one.
That's the old one from 19 years ago. But you're referring to the new one from 18 years ago.
Yeah.
No, I'd totally forgot that. I'd be curious to hear all these at some point. I've not heard any of these. I mean, not now, because we're cold. But it's. But no, I've not.
Do you know what? It just made me just. I mean, I just want to have a little scan along. Just want to see if you have the same outro.
Okay.
It would appear so.
Came in sooner though, didn't it?
Yeah. Bit more drums going on.
Dim is having a bit more fun times there.
Bit more bell.
It's longer as well.
It is.
Oh, it's different proportion.
I believe what we did, Robin, is we trimmed the fat.
And the harmonies on there as well.
Yeah, there is a horn harmony.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. So what we did there is we surprised ourselves by listening to a version of Milk that we probably haven't listened to for 18 years. And different intro, different outro.
Mm.
Yeah. Cool.
That's how that goes.
Yeah.
Who knew? I'd totally forgotten that there was a previous recording of that.
Yeah, I thought that might have tipped into actually with Wisest Man and the other ones, but it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was another one that I think was still consolidating what we were doing, though, wasn't it? You know, like we were kind of, I think we were kind of there with Answers as well, in what was the mix of ska and punk that we wanted to do before we wrote Play Some and Scum. Definitely, looking back at what was around before this album, before this EP and stuff. I think, I think Milk was. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it at the time when we got it and we were playing it live. Yeah, but is there any more on the writing side?
Well, I just remember. I think undoubtedly there will have been some of the KP influence in this, and there probably would have been some of the there's the metal-y influence that we've always had. So there was probably there was something of a sort of a. People will probably laugh when I say this because they won't be able to see it, but there's probably something of like a Soulfly / Sepultura kind of not achieving it, but it sort of been there. But I remember
I always got System of a Down.
But it's basically I was sort of very enamored with the idea of that kind of like. It's a very, very simplistic way of putting it, but that sort of Eastern sound, sort of sound in that Eastern kind of mode, you know what I mean, and incorporate it on this song because it's something that sort of KP did a bit, and I think we're going to get into a wider discussion here, which we might not have time for, but I think there's a bit of like, King Prawn obviously justifiably have that Asian influence in the band.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't.
Yeah.
But I don't know if part of my logic was you're influenced by what you're influenced by, and if you're listening to that sort of stuff, that's kind of what you afflict and you do your version of that. So there was undoubtedly the bulk of it was that. But also, I think being a lot younger and being kind of like, what's our, you kind of, when you're in the early stages of writing songs for something, it's like, what am I writing about? What's our story? What's our whole thing? Racism was always a big discussion in this part of the world, in sort of the Greater Bradford district, and there is a large Asian community in the Bradford district, in Bradford itself, and up here in Keighley. And I don't know if sort of part of resonating with that was sort of feeding into that as like a cultural background sound.
It always felt like a service to the lyrics that we would had those flavours in the tune.
Yeah, it was very that was like a very deliberate sort of link. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's kind of, I think in hindsight, it's kind of the sort of, you kind of had the luxury of being a bit fearless to do that when you were younger. Whereas I'd feel like I'd struggle to justify it as much nowadays, which is a bit of there's a double-edged sword there, because on the one hand, music is music. Yeah. And on the other hand, there is sort of,
there are cultural appropriation.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I hate the term cultural appropriation. I think it, with regards to music, I think it does have issues, and it does stifle certain bits of creativity, because music is such a melting pot, and you wouldn't have any of the things you have if it wasn't for the fact that people were inspired and took ideas from other types, other cultures of music. I think it's I think cultural appropriation, where it's taking the piss, or where it's where it's not respectful. Absolutely. But I think you go into difficult territory if you start thinking people just can't do stuff because they're not from that culture. I think that's, and I think, but I do completely get what you mean, that now we probably wouldn't go, let's put a load of Indian sounding vibes in this tune. Like we probably wouldn't go there in the way that we did then, just because it was, you get right, we were fearless and we hadn't questioned it. And I don't think the word cultural appropriation the phrase wasn't really in the lexicon, was it, at the time?
Yeah, and like I say, I think but the much more simplistic logic I had at the time was you just influenced, you listen to loads of stuff, and the stuff that resonates with you, and you are influenced by what you're influenced by, you know what I mean? And hearing that sort of sound in like bands like King Prawn and stuff like that, it was like a very exciting thing, you know what I mean? So it's probably just taking in some of that. So I think that was the kind of logic. But like you say as well, it did seem to suit the lyrical content. Yeah. It's kind of those things seem to go hand in hand. The sort of Sepultura-esque, Cavalera-esque influence in part on that track is due to the fact that, so the opening line is "Evil, why'd you kill the brain cell?" And then what I do after that is very deliberately gibberish.
Oh, yeah.
It's complete, but it's very pointedly. But I remember at the time, in the sort of the young, wide horizon experimental thing, being like, I'm sure, mate, there's even a term for it, which I can't. I remember finding this term at the time, which I cannot recall at all. But there's this whole thing in music of it. It's essentially you're using the voice as a percussive instrument. Right. There's no lyrical content. Yeah. But it's this style of thing you do where you're basically just trying to use the voice as like a drum. You know what I mean? And it's something that it's an idea that crops up on a lot of metal stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? A lot of, whether they're consciously doing it or not.
There's loads of metal.
Yeah, there's where they sort of properly trying to do, or maybe there are words, but they bend them in such a way so that they sound more percussive. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it sits in almost more with what the backline's doing, rather than like over there. And that was my logic with that. But I don't know if he's just come out more as like the rantings of a neurotic madman than anything sort of like...
It's not quite...
It's more just sort of someone... It's more like someone who sort of doesn't really know what they're doing falling down a flight of stairs. I think in retrospect, it's how it's come out. But I remember at the time being like, it's going to have... I'm going to do this with the lyrics, but then I'm going to do this percussive thing, and it's going to be all like... It's going to be all like earthy, and it's going to go with the sort of the sort of tribally drums, and it's going to be really, you know what I mean? And that's what I was, I mean... I'm not knocking that in that
And
you should always try for something a bit adventurous. You know what I mean? And and if you
it's like, how white am I?
Exactly. You know, but those are certainly kind of the sort of influences on that. But yeah, it was very, and I think, and then I can't remember if what I've done. I mean, obviously we haven't. Well, in the intervening time, we haven't done it that much in between. We played it live at the time a fair amount, but I can't remember if I had like a really specific set. It seems to me that with how pointed I am about stuff, it seems to me that I would have had like a really set bit of gibberish that I would have done, like a really set considered series of vowels and stuff like that, or consonants that were harsh enough to hit where I wanted to hit. But I don't know if I would have just made it up each time we did the tune.
So what you're saying is it was gibberish when we played it the other month?
No, I think I was trying to replicate. I think I was trying to replicate what I was. Whatever. I think the gibberish I was doing live then. In the future, was trying to replicate whatever gibberish that I'd ridded in a considered manner at the time. But that was kind of like sort of an experimental thing of wanting to, because I just thought it would just add to this like sort of mad experimental exotic flavour in a way. It'd be something a bit different. I don't know, it's sort of.
I was always very proud of the bass line in that song. Like it was a hook.
Did you play bass on that?
Yeah.
Oh, no way. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was always a really hooky bass line. I was always really pleased with that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it does sit nicely as well. And again, it's I mean, obviously with the mode of the tune, it has that kind of Easterny feel to it, which I know full well. I know that's far too vague a term to use musically, but as like as a shorthand in the context of what we're doing.
There was also that quite interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's right.
There's also that really interesting bit with the lyrics is in the chorus where there's two narratives going on, isn't there?
Yes.
So the backing vocals work with the main vocal, and then the backing vocals work by themselves as well, don't they?
So basically, if you take out my part, you guys are saying there is no place for you.
Yeah.
That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no place for you.
Yeah.
But there is a life beyond your agenda, ties into what's saying. No place. Yeah, ties into what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a crossword.
Yes.
Sort of.
That's not the only time we've done that, is it? I feel like there's... Or is it?
I can't think of another example as obvious as that. But that was...
No,
they might well have come up again, but yeah, that was certainly...
I was always quite pleased with that as a lyrical work.
No, that seemed to come across quite well. Listening back to that version, which I know is the older version, but also in the original as well, it's quite... You know what I was saying in a previous episode of Practice Fridge, where I was talking about getting more comfortable with singing and stuff like that and having to get around that. And there's obviously there's some points in this where I'm all over the shop with this one, you know what I mean? It's got loads of sort of different vocal things chopped and going on, but there are some pointed bits where I am trying to like sing and do the melodic thing in that kind of like mode and cadence. But also as well, I think you get a bit of it on Place from Scar as well. Interesting about I'm sort of again, this will come from the influences at the time, but I'm really pointedly using this like a weird fixed accent, which is sort of like undoubtedly part Cap Down, part King Prawn, which I think I just sort of made me feel more comfortable in doing that sort of thing and that sort of like melodic thing. It's a bit of a weird thing. It's like I definitely have this. I mean, I probably still do it to an extent, but certainly in the era of that album and before, I had this weird thing of sort of hiding behind these sort of faux vocal accents. Right, you know what I mean? It's kind of it's really interesting hearing that back, because I often forget how pointed it was. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I say, it's this weird mishmash conglomerate of different influences. It probably took me a while to get out of that, if I'm even out of that at all.
I'd say you are.
Well,
but
good to be here.
But you're right though. There are times when I hear older things and there's like voices that we're using because they're obviously things that we've heard and we like the style of it and we're kind of imitating it. Like you're not the only one. Like there's definitely parts like on this and in I think in Snakes and Ladders and that kind of stuff where I definitely sing in a voice that isn't quite my own. But in my head, it's because I'm wanting to sound like something else. I'm wanting it to sound to me like something else I like somewhere else. But we definitely do that much less. Like I don't listen to like the last 2 albums and hear any of that, or maybe probably not even with Seething as well. I doubt I'd hear as much.
Yeah, it feels like the sort of you find it more comfortable. But like you say, it's that exact thing of you just kind of you're picking up on what you've been influenced by and so that seems to fit what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it was like it was a big thing with Capdown's vocals of that kind of Jake obviously has that really pointed style, which was very distinctive and very influential. And like I say, I think it was just a sort of a cross between that. It's probably like part Jake, part Al. Part Barber, that was kind of like, and part Max Cavalera, it's kind of, but scrawny dude from Yorkshire, and that was the result. I remember being happy with how the tune came out. You know what I mean? It has a very distinctive feel to it. I think I don't remember really much about recording it, or
no, it doesn't stand out really. But I think if we had recorded this, if we'd reached the original version, like of Change of Plan, I think Milk would have been a much more predominant song, along with Answers, than what happened when we progressed and kept on writing, and then we came up with Play Some Ska and Scum, and I think Play Some Ska, it's one of those things where it ticks the boxes that Play Some Ska ticks most of the boxes that we want in a set that Milk does. The way it's got the dynamic of the metal against the ska and all that kind of stuff, which means we don't, now we've got 5 albums, or even when we had 2 albums, we didn't have a need to, go over that same territory again. And it'd be interesting. It's just, one of those what ifs. What would have happened if neither of those big singles were on that first album? What songs we would have kept forward had we kept on going in the same way? But also, that version of the album would have had songs from the original EP on it. We recorded Teardown again and Morally Blind and Mr. Bibb, and it's like if they'd been part of our first album, we would, we wouldn't have ever got rid of Mr. Bibb.
God, could you imagine?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I do still like playing it, but it's
just a lot. It's just a bit much, isn't it?
It's a bit much. It is a bit much.
Do you know what I mean? I'm probably, what it is I'm probably as neurotic as I was back then, but I'm 40 now. So you can't, you know what I mean? It's much more of a drain being artistically neurotic at this age. Right, it's more effort.
Yeah.
And to be, if people like the song, that's cool, but I can't be asked.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's just a lot of effort.
Yeah. Well, that's enough for that then. So that moves us on swiftly to Snakes and Ladders.
Yes.
Now, Snakes and Ladders to me is definitely a song that subjectively we wouldn't write a song like that anymore. Like I don't think we wouldn't write a song about exams. We
were probably closer to them then.
Yeah, no, we definitely were, weren't we? We wrote that song not long after we in fact we were probably, some of us were probably still at college, wouldn't we?
Maybe. Dimmers might still have been.
I could have been finishing up college. I think I was finishing up. No, I don't know. Anyway, it's like likelihood we'd have just finished college and we were just kind of into the work.
Joe.
Yes.
Well, the first 2 years of the band,
yes.
The very first 2 years of the band, coincided pretty much exactly with me being at Craven College,
right,
which was after buggering up a year at Oakbank,
right?
Because I did my AS levels there, and I really fluffed it, and I did terrible.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I need to redo this, so I went to Craven College in Skipton, which was a fantastic educational institution, I have to say. set amongst the backdrop of the gateway to the Dales. It was lovely. It really was. I had a very pleasant time there. But that was the first 2 years. It was sort of just prior to that summer, around that summer, the band started.
Right.
2002. You were there.
Yeah.
And so 2002, 2004 was my 2 years in college.
Yeah.
First 2 years of the band.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if by the end of that we'd have started doing.
No, we'd have still been EP. We would have been building up to the first EP.
Because you're still another 4, 5, 6, 7. Another 2 years off doing that version of the album.
Yeah.
Sorry for knocking the microphone. Another 3 years off Change of Plan.
Yeah. So this song wouldn't have been. But but obviously it was the subject matter was still felt relevant.
Yes, very much so. I think it still does in a lot of respects. I mean, well, here's the thing: because you're talking about, okay, you might not write a song about sort of exams and academia and the education system, but the bottom line is, it's in some ways it's kind of relevant all through your life because it sets a bit of a like a bit of a precedent for you and a bit of a. I bet there are people who are still our age and older who have hang-ups about what they went through at school, or the way they were treated at school, and thought, life would have been different if. Yeah. I'd have done this or done that, or not been told this and not been told that, and not been put down because of this, that, and the other, etc., etc. I personally had an extremely mixed time throughout my education. And when people, people sort of ask like, what were you like at school or whatever, or what were you like learning, and I like my answer to that is so varied. You know what I mean? Such a bloody fragmented grenade of different experiences. Yeah. Because in some respects I was very good academically, and in other respects I was absolute, car crash. And I seem to have this weird thing where like I seemed to be like very picky about where I put my efforts or that sort of thing. But I did have a massive hang up about the sort of things you went through when you go through that process, because it does have, a massive, especially obviously at the time, it can have a massive effect on you, and being assessed in that way can have a massive effect on you. And it's a bit of a weird thing that sort of, when you're of your the stage in your life where you're going through all these really vibrant emotional and psychological changes coincides with where these institutions sort of almost scientifically assess your intelligence and your capabilities and your, you know what I mean? And it's kind of the hitting of those two things makes for something quite turbulent, I think. Yeah. But I certainly had very forthright in I had teachers who I thought were absolutely fantastic. I had teachers who at the time I thought shouldn't be teachers. Yeah. And at the time I had and obviously I'm like, I'm a long way away from it now, so it's probably, it's probably not something that gets on my radar as much. But certainly at the time I thought that teaching was it was kind of unforgivable if you did it wrong. Yeah. Or if you put people off wanting to learn, or if you put people off wanting to, if you stifled people's curiosity in any way. I understand. I know it's a difficult job to do. You know what I mean? Because I realise you have to entice and inspire a load of people whilst getting a very strict avenue of ways you're allowed to do that from powers that be above you. You know what I mean? And undoubtedly the combination of those two things is a very difficult thing to sort of pass through. But I think, like I say, at the time, being of that age and being the, emotionally explosive little shit that I was, I think the bad experiences of that hit me a lot harder, I think. Yeah. That turned into a bit of a therapy session, didn't it?
No, it's quite all right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I had a similar time at school with regards to my achievements and how I got into it, because again I excelled at something and was abysmal at others. I also just really didn't care. I think because I've been brought up with musicians, and I just felt like that was where I was going. I literally just felt like, oh no, I'll be all right, because I'm gonna use the gift of the gab and get my way into playing music or doing sound engineering or something like that, which is not, I went into music. I didn't do the sound engineering, which is what was something I wanted to do at school. But yeah, I made catastrophic mistakes. I totally fluffed up my A levels, but managed to get enough to get into the degree I wanted to do. Which kind of, once I got a good degree, luckily kind of covered up the cracks in all the GCSEs and A levels. So
yeah. But again, I'll actually say it's that kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's just it's weird. It seems like a lot of the ways that we use to, I know this is a very simplistic way of putting it, but like measure intelligence aren't really very effective at doing that, because it's a much more complicated.
Yeah, and also it's like timing is a massive thing, and not everyone is excelling at that time in their life. Like, I excelled academically in the way that they needed me to excel then. When I was nearly hitting 30, like that's when I went back to university, and I was book smart. Do you know what I mean? I did my exams. I really cared about getting the essays done right. I did not care when I was 15, 16, 18, 19. I just did not care. I was only there because it was the thing I had to do, and then I was going to play guitar. I was going to play with my mates and do the thing that I was really interested in. And it does, it's a system that is dying to have, something that's more based on the individual. But sadly, there's so many individuals. How do you make a system that accommodates that?
Yeah,
which you have to kind of understand to some degree. Doesn't make it right though. But so that's what Snakes and Ladders about.
So obviously, and that's sort of the basis of the title. Really, it's this idea that you go through this thing, and then some people get to progress upwards, and then some people slide back downwards, and sort of that's that cheery.
Yeah. I was always I did really like that imagery caused by the song title. It was well done.
Yeah, this was sort of one of those ones where I think it was one of those situations where I remember, here's this punk song, and then somebody else in the room went, well, you can play the trombone on this one. And I was like,
yeah.
What are you talking about?
You still do that.
I still do that, yeah. I was like, I don't know what to do here. Well, there's a trombone sat on a stand there. You could try, maybe we could have some trombone in it.
Do I have to?
Isn't the all right, fine. What the chords, all right, yeah. I really, when we did this at Handfest, I really liked playing it.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed playing this one at Handfest, yeah. It's just, I forgot as well, that's a note on the writing. The bit I remember I do in the writing was, because I don't know if this one was as sort of fluidly one thing when it came into the room. I think it was a bit more fragmented, and I don't know if it was based on a riff that Matt was doing and the sort of ideas that he was playing about with. But I do distinctly remember that sort of second verse bit. I remember hearing what everyone had done and hearing all these other bits, and I remember pitching what I believe I described at the time as like the Sum 41 thing. I was like, okay, right, it's going to be like a rap bit, and you're going to say this line, and I'm going to say this line, and then you're going to go, and you know what I mean? And I remember playing it, and everyone just sort of immediately breaking up laughing, because they were just like, can we get away? This is really... You know what I mean? It's just pure fat lip. Bit, you know
absolutely,
what I mean? And I'm not sure. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with
that. Yeah.
But we were doing that. The kind of taking turns thing rather than harmony a lot on that album. There was a lot more of that in the older times of Random Hand.
The older times.
Which is, we don't do that nearly as much now. Like that, I felt like at that point, I felt like that was very much a thing, that we would take those turns lyrically. But yeah, it's not. I don't think it characterized that way now.
Should we bring it back?
We could do a bit.
Never hurts to have more of a Beastie Boys vibe.
Yeah, well, I like it.
There you go. We can do that.
Yeah.
But no, I really, really enjoyed dusting the cobwebs off it and playing it live.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun to do. I had a weird epiphany getting ready for that, rehearsing it, because on the record again, it's layered trombone. There's that middle sort of middle stomp bit, and then you've got the sort of the the fanfare, and there's a layered bit on top of that. I remember being like, oh, which bit should I do? And then I did both of them, not at the same time, but I split them up.
Amazing.
And I remember thinking like, wow, that's the most thought I've put into anything before doing a gig. And I bet nobody noticed. No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. This is also one of the... I mean, if we're going through the songs we've already gone through for Change of Plan, and I'm sure you'll be able to come up with examples of this prior to Change of Plan, but this is the first tune on the record, isn't it, really, where we do, again, something that's a bit of a Random Hand staple, which is, that's the last chorus. Who wants a riff and a shouty bit? Last chorus, last call for chorus. Anything? I'm a riff. Hello, do me. I'm a riff. The point I'm making is like a riffy, shouty, breakdowny bit at the end of this.
Stop hitting the mic.
So hit the mic. Keep it. Damn you, Mike. But that is something which sort of becomes a bit of an RH staple, isn't it? Really? And it's
we were always really good, I think. And Ian, who our agent did comment at the time, who pulled you up on the choruses. He did also caveat that we were always very good at middle eights and outros. Like I said, they're great at that, but they're rubbish at everything else.
We're really good at finishing it. We're getting it over with, get it done. Yep. Don't care about anything before that.
The thing is, because obviously the way we write a lot of the time is someone presents a verse, a chorus, and a verse and a chorus, or like the first 2/3 of a song, and then that gets messed with, and then we all kind of like throw our hat in the ring for what comes afterwards, and it's always quite an exciting part of our writing.
I got into the habit when I'm writing. I got into the habit of starting to include middle eights because I got a bit sick of that moment in the practice room of like, well, now what? Well, we could do this. I don't like that. We could do that. Or we could try that.
Fair enough.
So, you know what I mean? And that always became a bit that I started to dread. So I always pointedly at home started being
maybe
like,
I'm totally rose tinted glasses in it though, because actually you're right.
No, I think for you guys, but the thing is, you guys always
had instruments.
You guys liked jamming, and I didn't like jamming. I wanted to be like, look, what are we doing so we can do it, so we can go to Chester's and get some chicken. Like, let's put put an end to this. So I mean, certainly earlier on, I was very much like that. And up for exploring ideas, but like I say, I got a bit sick of that. So I was like, right, this is what the song does now, guys, and then it's done.
But the riffy outro is a thing. But it's what else do you do? What else can you do?
Well, you either finish, if this album's anything to go by, you either finish on a reggae bit or you finish on a riffy bit. And those are your only options. That's what you do. You pick one of those, and that's what you do. Going back to what I was saying about putting the horn line over it, it's a bit niche, so it might be interesting to anyone. But if I write a tune and it's horn-led, I tend to I get very... I mean, I'm not particularly great at theory, but I make more of a conscious effort to be aware of the notes that I'm playing. I mean, if I know like this is how the horn line goes, okay, so I need these chords sat underneath it, so I'll do that. Whereas in those sorts of situations like Snakes and Ladders, where someone's gone, why don't you put a horn line onto it? I almost exclusively do that by ear. You know what I mean? I don't ever recall consciously, looking over at Matt or Dan and being like, "Oh, what are you playing there?" I just sort of stand in the corner and noodle until I've got something which sort of fits over it. So it's just from a writing perspective, it's kind of an interesting kind of, you know what I mean? It's a different approach, but I think that's good because that's why it feels like it doesn't get too stagnant. You know what I mean? Well, the horn line for Snakes feels very different from like Scum.
Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's not come from the same place, and it's sat over something else. So it has a bit of a different feel and vibe to it. So it's a good thing, really.
Yeah.
I don't know if I had any further interesting points to make with that, but I just thought it was a little tidbit there.
No, it's cool. I think that's enough for Snakes and Ladders. So there we have it, Milk and Snakes and Ladders. I hope you're finding it as interesting as we are, revisiting all these places we were at when we wrote them and seeing where it takes the conversation. It's definitely turning into a bit of a therapy session for me and Robin, which I think is welcome, actually. You know, being a band for 20 years, there's a lot of stuff's happened that we just haven't thought about or haven't revisited, and it's definitely, it's reminding us what an important part of our lives this has been. So thank you for joining us on this journey, and I hope the insight is as interesting to you as it is to us. But for now, that's this week, and next week we have Dynamo Penis Death Bastard, where you'll get to find out where that name came from and what the hell it was all about. And almost definitely more therapy on that subject. So thank you very much again, and goodbye. See you later.
Round the cycle